and the pressing climate changes that women were experiencing on the front lines was a little known fact in many households around the world. And now we are experiencing so much momentum as women's leadership over the last decade has continued to rise. This is a time of tremendous change on our planet, where all the institutions and systems we rely on are in flux, and there's never been a more important time to have grassroots leadership shaping our choices and the future in our communities. And we need women's leadership more than ever out front, courageously mapping out a new way of leading and a new way of designing solutions and healing and protecting our planet and everything we love. We're so honored to hold these regular conversations with a global community. And by keeping this drumbeat alive, we're showing how to exchange solutions across regions, how to link arms in a time when we can learn from each other's best practices. Women's Earth Alliance has programs in sub-Saharan Africa where we work on COVID and climate resilience. We have a program in Indonesia. We work in the United States with the Sierra Club. And we have a global network that informs and resources grassroots leaders. So welcome to tonight's event. Next slide, please. It's my honor to introduce Audria Evelyn. I had the fantastic chance to meet her in the summer of 2019 when our Indonesia Accelerator program launched. And not only did I get to meet Audria, but I got to travel to Little Spoon Farms and to see the work she's building, a grassroots solution, a community-driven farm that's connecting community farmers with regenerative agriculture solutions, that's educating the community, and that has an economic model whereby Audria shares her produce with people throughout Bali. Audria is a visionary leader. She's dedicated at the grassroots level, and from there, her solutions are rising. And I'm so delighted to be with you tonight, Audria, and to be a part of sharing your incredible work. So I invite you all to sit back in your seats and enjoy. This is the first of its kind, a hands-on DIY experience. And some of you may have your materials and some may not, but when the evening is over, you'll understand food security more, as well as have some key solutions that you can implement in your own homes. So take it away, Audria.
Okay, hi, good morning everyone, and good night at some parts of the world, or good afternoon. I'm Audria. I'm the founder of Little Spoon Farm, and the importance of food security during this COVID times has been really significant, because now we some people who are especially living in more remote areas, like the type of communities that I work with, they don't have enough facility to store their vegetable. They don't have cold storage. So we try to reintroduce that what our ancestors have been doing in the past for a really long time. So that's one of the things that I do. I teach farmers how to convert their conventional practices to regenerative practices, farming using no synthetics, and doing the program planning, the planting programs for all their farms, calculating their harvest, and most of the times during some seasons we get overabundance of harvest on certain types of vegetables, which are actually really good to be preserved through wild fermentation is one of the easiest. And there are other types of fermentation too, like pickling, or also making alcohol. Our vinegar is also a type of fermentation. And in Indonesia, it's very, very common to make tempeh or rice bean cakes, which are very nutritional. But today, I'm just going to go over with you 4 different types of recipes, and we'll start with 2 recipes, and then a short Q&A break, and then at the next 2 recipes. And I will teach you the basic of wild fermentation. That is the first one, and then with cabbage, which is in season right now in most parts of the world. So that's gonna start with sauerkraut, two different types. And also what's in season right now is beetroot and green beans, green string beans. So I will teach you how to ferment that as well, how to cut them, how to prepare them. And the second set of the tutorial will be about making garlic and honey a must-have in your pantry. It's really good as flavoring as the basis of sauces. And also, another thing is the apple cider vinegar, because now it's also the apple season, and you get, when we make apples, we have a lot of scraps like the peels and also the core and some of the ends, which we can actually just put it all together, make a scoby, like a kombucha out of the apple cider or the apple scraps, and it can be done easily at home. So that's how the rundown will go. And then if we have extra time at the end, we'll have answer more questions. And please put in the chat box if you have any questions, and we will help you to will help select the answers that will be brought up. And do you have anything to say else before I start? No. Okay. Maybe a bit up so people can see. Okay. So for the first one, I will start with sauerkraut, which is a type of wort fermentation. Making wort fermentation is very important, and it's been done for the longest time, in many years, since the ancient times, because aside from it preserves food, it also helps with food digestion. So for example, like eating a raw broccoli and comparing it to eating fermented broccoli, eating fermented broccoli was more safer in the past, because the bacteria that are living in the surface of the vegetables, they are cultured and they neutralize some of the toxins that are already present in the vegetable itself. So with cabbage, it's very easy. I pre-cut this in two, so because one cabbage is usually too much for me, and these are all the things that we grow at the farm at this moment. And making sauerkraut, you need two, depending how big is your household. You need the ingredients first. Can be from your garden or from your regular grocery store, but make sure you have to pre-wash them, and it has to be clean, because whatever you are putting into the fermentation, it will get cultured as well. So these are types of jars that I use for small batch fermentation. These are the bullet jars. The basic of it is, you can never miss this step, is to sterilize. Sterilize whatever is on your knife, on your cutting board, and especially inside the jar, because you will be wanting to keep this for a while. So after you sterilize, it's really good to keep the name of the vegetable that you put in, and also the date that you are making it. For Manu, can you show closer so people can see? These are the cabbages that I'm gonna use. Just gonna, yeah, I'm gonna. Well, for me, I don't throw away any peels, because I also believe that food scraps it doesn't always have to be food loss. It can be composted, or it can also be included in the ferment, because when you're fermenting it, the texture will also change, and it's so nice to eat and as well as nutritious. So So these are just pre-washed cabbages, and I cut it really thinly because I like to have it easy to eat. And these jars had been sterilized before. So this is the first one. Just put the cabbage in. This is the easiest way, and you can do with any leftover vegetables at home. For example, if you have like pre-cut cucumbers or carrots, that's also really easy to do. So you can basically do it with everything, and it's preferably to use organic vegetables because they're in their skin and they're still rich in yeast, natural yeast, and they haven't been sprayed with like conventional how conventional farms are grown. They have the last GAP practices to be sprayed with chlorine, so that also reduces the chance of having good bacteria growing. So with ferment, since we deal with a lot of bacteria and sanitation is very important, and the bacteria here eats the bacteria naturally from the cabbage, eats the natural sugar from the cabbage, which turns it into a sour environment or acid environment. In the acid environment, usually bad bacteria don't live. However, if you see funky colors, for example, like orange or like bright blue, of course, you don't want that to be eaten. But white mold, slightly gray, it's usually are okay. So this is the basic, and it's as simple as having the cabbage cut, add some water. This is in the States, I would not prefer to use the tap water, or at least wait until a couple of days so that the chlorine would evaporate, because the chlorine also kills the bacteria in your ferment. And I like to and this is actually basic, to mix it with salt. It's to preserve the texture of the crunchiness of the vegetable, and also it acts like a natural preservative. Salt here, and it doesn't have to be in a certain ratio. So as long as you want a touch of saltiness, because you're using it as a preservative instead of using it as a flavor. So I put about that much. And the next thing that is important is to keep all the ferment things that you want to ferment down. So either you use a saucer. Usually like the small saucer works because it fits to the top of the lid. For example, I use this one as a ball, the lid of a jar. So you want this to be completely submerged. And then next would be to close it. And then another option, you can also use some any kind of citrus or any kinds of aromatic herbs to bring out the flavor of the sauerkraut. For example, if you want to try out with having some kaffir lime leaves or cardamom or some celery thrown in there, it's completely up to you, like depending on how you like it to cook. The lemon will also act as a preservative and also a starter for the acidic environment.
Audria, I have a quick question.
Yes.
How do you sterilize your equipment?
My equipment. Okay. So we have a few different methods. For example, with these jars, we boil them. We boil them until they're completely clean, and then once we take it out from the water, we already use a tongue that is already sterile. And for our knives and like countertop tables, we use the methanol solution. It's basically like a form of alcohol, but drinkable, but we use to wet our countertop. Yeah. Any other questions for now?
That's all for now. That's a question from Devin. Thank you.
Okay. So we did one sauerkraut already. So if we do with the white one, it's also going to be the same method. And even if you're doing with let's say what we have in season right now is like some really good zucchinis that can be done in the same method. The play is with the aromatics and the flavoring. And in Indonesia climate and with fermentation, temperature is very crucial. So when we have hot summer days, usually this ferment has to be left outside for about 3 days in Indonesia time. But usually in the US, when you're entering the fall season, it's about a week outside, or can be sometimes even more, and they don't like the light. So you put it in the cupboard, and for the Indonesian participants, you store it outside about 3 days, and then put it in the fridge so it stops the fermentation process. It slows it down. But if you want to keep it longer, you can also store it in the freezer actually, but it will change the texture of the vegetables. And also, when it starts fermenting, because you are culturing a living bacteria, it will produce carbon dioxide. So it will become dizzy, especially when you're putting it outside, and it will create bubbles. So having this type of ball jar with like, so you can burp it easily every day, so it doesn't turn into alcoholic. So burping is very important, especially when you're doing it with a glass jar, it can explode. Or the flip-top jar would be one of the other good ones to use. Yeah.
Great. Audrey, we have another question. Belinda, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Sure. One of my questions was, are there any kinds of vegetables that you would not recommend that we ferment?
Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't recommend actually kale, because once I've tried so many times, but the texture of the leaf becomes too soft unless you roll it like a kimchi first. Like roll the kale and then put it together. And sometimes what helps is also having the celery seeds inside the mixture so that the kale fiber is still intact. When the fermentation process is happening, usually it also breaks down the fibers of the plant, and kale gets really mushy. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So next one, I'm going to talk about beet and string beans pickles. So with ferment and pickles, they're similar but different in a way that you can do it. You can do the first wort fermentation first and then pickle it further to add more flavor and to preserve it further, because pickling is the main difference is pickling is using vinegar based liquid instead of just water and salt, like with wild fermentation. So with my beet pickles, we sell this in the farm, and we produce a lot of beetroot. When we wanted to add more colors, we add this one. That's why today I wanted to try beetroot and green beans, because they make such beautiful color, and you get stuck with it to ferment for many months. So it's really pretty when you have it in your shelf, like different colors of ferment. So with the beetroot, I personally like to blanch it first for the bulb. So I separate the bulb and the stem, and this I keep to saute And this is not a food waste. This is as fresh and as nutritious with so much antioxidants in the root of the leaves, and we keep them. And with beetroot, it's easiest to peel by blanching them. So you boil them for a bit in really hot water, and then you immediately drown it in ice bath. Before that, you with tomato blanch, you can make a small cut before boiling and putting it in the ice bath water. The ice bath water will make the skin of the beetroot separate, then and the meat, and then it will be much easier for you to clean it off. And what I did after that, after I blanched it, I I cleaned it, and then I cut it julienne style. But this is very um, up to a personal preference. If you want to cut it julienne, or if it's like if you get candy striped beetroot, you can do also like the rounded cut. And with the same method, the beetroot after it's blanched and cleaned and cut, put it into the into the fermenting jar. This is still part of wax fermentation. And pickling. So there are actually two stages in this. So with the green beans, I chop the, well, it's actually best to do it like this, one by one, because it will make the texture much nicer. But since we are fermenting it, sometimes it's still okay because the fermenting process also breaks down the texture. But I'm gonna cut it for faster service. So this was washed before, and so on to make it very clean. You can, this is what I love to do with my ferments. I like to layer them. So it looks pretty on the side. And when you have a cabinet full of it, it looks really, really nice. And, okay, like with this one, I want to add some garlic as a little bit of flavor. Bruise it a little bit. Garlic also act as a preservative, natural preservative. And okay, I stop there, and then I added some water, and then some salt again, and maybe a little bit of lime so that it's completely safe also. So that lime, lime, water, and salt helps to keep the healthy environment in this wild fermentation. And another thing that I wanted to add, is actually an apple vinegar that I already made. So this is when you turn a ferment into a pickle. So just with this and with the water brine, you can adjust the flavor, and you ferment it, let's say in Indonesia, for 3 days outside and 7 days in America. You want to ferment this first, so it has a nice umami flavor to it. Fermentation brings out this umami flavor as well that previously not in, it cannot be a processed or uh, tasted in before it's fermented. So it adds another process of flavor expression.
Good question,
Yeah.
Audria. Good question. Sarita, did you want to ask yours?
I was just asking what umami flavor is.
umami flavor. So umami, a lot of chefs would describe it as a flavor that is aside from sweet, sour, bitter, uh, salty. Umami is something different. It's the flavor of if a lot of people use MSG in their food or use a lot of Japanese use kombu or you make broth from mushroom or the tomato paste or garlic. There's this one flavor, this delicious flavor that we name it umami. It's not a asset name it. It's the sixth flavor. It's called umami, and that can be achieved through the fermentation process. Yeah. Mhm.
And Audrey, I wanted you to know that there are people on this call tonight from California, New York, Washington, D.C., Guam, Vermont, Virginia, Indonesia, St. Louis, and the Netherlands. So there are a couple of other climates we'll have to talk about at some point for the timing on your fermentation.
Awesome. I'm really glad that you guys can join me today here, and with you guys who are living in the Netherlands and up north with temperate climates. It's usually basic fermentation is more than a week outside of the cabinet, outside of the dark room or outside the fridge, because you guys have a pretty cold climate at this time of the year. Mhm. And so like again to this, I usually recommend this in 3 days in Indonesia, maybe about 7 days, even up in Europe. But then always, if you want to make sure taste it, when you taste it, make sure that you are using um, a tongue that is already sterilized. If that's already according to what you like, then okay, then we can stop the fermentation process and start the pickling process. So for me, I always keep an apple cider vinegar from all the apple peels. You can use also like pear peels, the core of it, all the food scraps, and so I'm gonna pause this for a little bit because I'm gonna show you about the vinegar making. Vinegar can be from everything, white vinegar or apple cider or rice vinegar. So these are the apple peels that we usually throw away after we make juices or it's not good enough at the farm that it's like it has some holes in it. We do like we make vinegar like the first fermentation, like how we put the water and a little bit of lemon starter, and then it's the ratio is 1 to 10. So 1 parts of food waste or can be rice, apple, anything. 1 part of it, and then water of 10 parts. And then you wait about 4 weeks. Every 4 days you stir it out. It will create a sour environment, acidic environment based on because of the starter that you put in the lemon. Or you can use it or you can use another different type of starter, which is from another batch of apple cider vinegar. Can also be done as well. And what I already have here is the apple cider that already produces mother, which is the SCOBY, which is like in kombucha, you see this a lot. This like gelatinous thing. This you can eventually produce this out of your own food waste from your own apple scraps. And this will be a culture. You can share this with your friends too, and they can start their own vinegar. But it just takes about 1 month to create it. And the longer you store the vinegar, the clearer it gets. and you can use it also as cleaning agents and other things like that, which is really beautiful. So I use this apple cider vinegar, and after fermenting that, pour it in here and doing the same thing again. Have a really heavy lid to press it down. So make sure that everything is completely pressed down and then cover it.
Audria, any questions? Wondering if Ayla wants to ask her question. Do you want to unmute and ask?
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so my question is why what's the reason you add garlic? Is it for the flavor or for the fermentation process, for natural preservative or anything else?
It's for all. Mhm. It's for the flavor,
Yeah.
for the fermentation process,
Uh,
to protect the fermentation process,
mhm.
because garlic has natural anthocyanins and also antimicrobial properties. So garlic is good in the
Okay.
fermentation. And also with garlic being fermented, it creates the umami flavor. It brings out the flavor of the garlic. So you not just get like a bland sour beef, you'll get like a garlic flavored beef.
Okay, because I'm from Indonesia and my mom always preserve chili with garlic in the refrigerator, and
Mhm.
I know now that garlic is antimicrobial, right? So
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, it's good for preservative. Okay, thank you, Audria.
Thank you. So actually, just on a side note, if you're fermenting garlic, you will see some blueness that will be produced when you're fermenting it, and it is actually safe. Unlike the other types of ferment, well, fermentation, especially if you see other colors like blue, you don't want that. But with garlic, it's fine because it's a type of uh, anti antioxidant called anthocyanin, which produces blue color. So safe to eat. Mm. I'm gonna move on to the last one actually. The last one. So we did the apple cider vinegar and the garlic and string beans together at the same time, and we already did um, the sauerkraut, which you can apply with any other types of vegetables that are available to you right now. And maybe I talk a little bit about saving the seeds of like the vegetables that you use after you ferment, having some tomato seeds or like squash seeds that are left over. You can dry them and save it and plant it when it's time to. If you want to try gardening at this time too, that will work, so you don't waste anything. And the rest you
Yeah.
can compost it.
Audria, Vanya has a question. Vanya?
Hello, Audrey.
Yes.
I want to ask about the apple vinegar. Actually, you use Scooby for kombucha. It's like Scooby. And how about wild fermentation? Uh, can apple vinegar made from white fermentation?
Yes. So the SCOBY from the SCOBY that I have inside my apple cider vinegar is actually coming out on its own. So
Oh,
you just have to wait for it, and then it will start to come out on its own, and then it will be on the top layer, and then it will start getting thicker and thicker and thicker. The more you have it, you can share it with your friends that they can start their own and make it faster because you have another culture. It picks things up. However, you cannot use like I wouldn't advise using the kobe for kombucha or apple cider vinegar because they are different types of cultures of bacteria. Mhm.
oh, okay. It's pretty similar, right?
The Scobia is a community of bacteria, yeast, and fungus together. So they're Their structures are similar, but the types and variety of bacteria, fungi, and yeast in that SCOBY is different based
Oh,
on made from. Mm.
okay, okay. Thank you.
We have one other question related to the mother. Monica?
Hi, my name is Maniaka. I was wondering about if you buy a store-bought apple cider vinegar that contains the mother, can you reuse that mother in a homemade ACV?
Definitely, definitely, yeah. You can use just a little bit of it and will start your culture faster, especially if you're located not in a hot climate country that will speed things up much faster. Mhm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Terima kasih.
Kembali. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the last one. It's about honey and garlic because we decided to keep this recipe since we use a lot of garlic at home ourselves, and then a lot of the Via team also uses garlic. So I just decided to okay, let's just do it. Okay, so garlic and I have a bunch of garlic here. Sometimes I buy a lot of garlic that I don't end up using everything for. So I like to peel them all and just store it nicely before I make a honey garlic ferment. This is something that a lot of people love to keep in their pantry. But then this also goes like a big pickle, going through the 2 steps of food preservation. First, it's the lacto fermentation. So with clean garlic, it's just bruising it first so that so that the flavor cracks out from the alum itself. And then what I like to do is just crack all this garlic out, just crush it a bit slightly, and then always with garlic is the company is salt, because with salt you get double the flavor out because it extracts the flavor out of the garlic. And then I would leave this for about like an hour or two so that the salt really brings out the flavor out. And I put fresh honey into the garlic. This fresh honey. Usually I wait about um, 30 minutes first, 30 minutes to 1 hour to 2 hour, depending on what you like, and then add fresh honey. And honey also acts as preservative, but also as an activator because honey has enzymes, natural enzymes in it. But then when you put this much sugar with this concentration, this thickness, it also acts like a sealant for any reaction. So this will produce a new type of flavor mix of garlic and honey. And it also will last for a very long time. And you can basically keep it forever because honey also have antibacterial properties, and garlic also have antibacterial properties, and we have salt in it too. And you can use it as a base for any type of cooking. If you're making barbecue grill, mix it a little bit with your barbecue sauce or marination. Yeah, and this is the easiest thing to do, but you can keep your leftover garlic for a very long time and just close it. You can leave it outside for a bit to let it ferment if you want some more pungent garlic flavor. But then if you like it a little bit raw, then have it stored in the refrigerator right away. So that would be all of the recipes that I will cover today. Later on, I will send a handout and my contact form after this presentation. So if anybody wants to ask about anything at all, even if it's not today, I'm very open to receive your questions and uh, whatever challenges that you experience wherever you are. And yeah, I'm going to close it right here and I will pass it back on to Sarita and Amira. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
I
you.
hope this is helpful.
Thank you so much, Audria. I know if anyone here is like me, we've been spending so much time in our kitchens, especially since COVID. So some new things that we can make and protecting our food security at the same time is incredibly helpful. There are several questions that came in that are more related to food security. And Melinda, I was wondering if you'd like to ask your question for starters.
Okay, sorry, could you repeat the second question, please? The food security and what was the second point?
Melinda, would you like to ask your question? I will ask. The question is, during the COVID pandemic, when people are struggling to access food, have you found these practices that you're sharing today to be extra valuable?
I would say it's very valuable because I have seen a lot in like my farmers' homes themselves, like when they have so much produce on their field, they have unlimited stock of kale or like cabbages, but then once it's ready to harvest, and now that the COVID has changed a lot of the business climate, restaurants are closed, hotels are closed. By teaching them how to ferment these cabbages into sauerkraut, and how we can also resell that into the market as something that is good also for them as an organic product which promotes good gut health. This helps with the food security. We can still eat the cabbage much later after the harvest date. It helps our community because we still get access to their organic food rather than them just throwing it away, and the farmers can still get income from it. Mhm. That's how it helps in our organization during this time.
Audria, I'd love for you to share a little bit about how you started Little Spoon Farms.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I started the Spoon Farm in Bali about 4 years ago. I was at first doing research because I wanted to do farming, and I saw regenerative farming was still very young, and especially Indonesia, and a lot of the impact that causes many environmental problems are actually coming from our consumption habits, which food is actually one of the highest because now we have more than 7 billion people in the world. 3 times a day we eat, or sometimes even more, and how the farmers are very correlated with the urban society and how we have to improve it. And we cannot do it alone. We cannot just make one farm to fix this problem, but also to collaborate with other farmers who are around our area, and also bring what I feel like what we have the knowledge to help these farmers and teach them about like some just uh, simple fermentation things that they have already forgotten. Their grandmother did it too in the past before with different types, and we are trying to reintroduce this back to them. So I think regenerative farming and regenerative food system was one of my biggest calling for doing and starting Little Spoon Farm. And also it's in Misha where I'm from. Mm.
Sarita, do you have any questions?
Yeah, Audria, I know you participated in, you're an alumni of the Accelerator program and the Grassroots Accelerator program in Indonesia, and I'm just wondering how that program impacted you and your work.
it impacted me so much, and I'm very, very grateful that I had the chance to be part of the Accelerator last year, because then I get to meet so many amazing women who are working in the sustainability field, and they have been doing amazing work. And a lot of the challenges actually is to connect with each other and to share resources that we already know, especially as a grassroots organization. So by having women as Women's Earth Alliance, bringing us all together and make us identify the resources that we have, the alliance that we can make, it produced so much collaboration out of it, which actually speeds up a lot of my projects and their projects. And that is just amazing. And thank you so much for the support every time from the WIA leaders. Yes. Yeah.
Great. We
Help
have
me.
another question from Tarita.
Yeah, I was wondering if you noticed any changes to food items you find in the local grocery stores there. Are you seeing more local in-season food, especially during COVID, or have there been changes in how many imported foods there are in the stores?
Mhm. So there are some import. Indonesia has an issue with imported foods because the farmers, like many other places in the world, more farmers are aging, and there are not many new younger farmers replacing that um, part of the system. So we do get a lot of imported foods, and then the COVID began and import regulation was restricted. So we had a limitation in garlic, we had a limitation in um, onions. So things started to change, and the price was to buy a bag of garlic cost like 120,000 rupiah, which was way unaffordable as a basic staple. So we did I did see a lot of changes in terms of, then I know how come we are in this position. It's because our food system is unsustainable. It's not grown locally. Now we eat garlic every day, but we cannot eat garlic because it's way too expensive. And from there, then with time, things are starting to change. A few months later, and then I see more produced from remote areas are being brought into the market, into the accessible areas. So there was a bit of a shift in how people eat during this time.
Audria, for people who are new to fermenting their own foods, if there were one thing that they could do in their homes right now to get started with some of the tips that you've recommended, which thing do you think is the most user-friendly?
The most user-friendly, I would say, it's sauerkraut and like the apple cider vinegar. It's the basic of making wild fermentation and vinegar actually. So it's very useful. You don't have to use the same materials that I already have with me today. But then having the knowledge to preserve with just salt and lime and water, it's an important knowledge to have, and it comes very handy. And making vinegar also, because when you make vinegar, it's also a type of preservative and a cleaner, and it's also very alkalizing for your body if you drink it. So you can use that with any types of fruit peels. And yeah, I would say those two that you can use
Okay.
immediately. Then we can start tonight for dinner.
Thank you for the shortcut. We have one final question from Samantha. Samantha, would you like to ask?
My apologies, I was writing all of that down. So my question is, when you're canning, how often should you burp it? Because I kind of wanted to make some, but I don't leave it for a week and have it explode. I'm in San Francisco.
Okay. So are you canning or are you doing wild fermentation?
I was going to do the beets with the beans.
Okay. So that's actually it's still considered as wild fermentation and not canning. Actually, canning is a completely different process where there are other risks, for example, like botulism and other things. That's with the sealing the boiled jars with a hot bath. We don't do that in wild fermentation. So the question again was to
How often do I have to burp them or open them so they don't?
by rule of thumb, burp them every day if you're having them outside, just to be safe.
Okay.
Until you put them in the fridge. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
So friends, I'm noticing that we have a few more questions, and that brings me to that this is really the beginning of a conversation, and we're excited to stay connected to everyone here. After today's call, the WIA team is going to send out an email with resources and tools for you to do your own fermentation at home. We'll also be sending some links for you to understand ways that you can get involved in creating food security in your own communities as well. So I will be integrating the questions that are left in the chat, and we'll get those answers and we'll put them into the email as well when we send it out tomorrow. And so I would love to just share with you some of the ways that you can get involved. We're wanting these World Weaver Salon series to really give people information and solutions they can implement. So we're asking people to document themselves, engaging some of these new practices and share them with us. We would love to promote this work out through our social media channels. And if you're not already connected to WIA on Instagram and Facebook, on Twitter, we encourage you to follow those channels because it's a great way to see what our global alliance is up to. And then we have some other opportunities to volunteer with our organization and with many of the grassroots efforts that WIA is connected to, doing research, working on communications services, potentially tech services, and especially for those of you who are volunteering with Verizon, we would love to explore some of the volunteer services that you could provide to the network and partner with us to bring this really critical work to the fore. Women's leadership and grassroots leadership, regional solutions are rising. And as Audria said just a few minutes ago, it's important because we're sharing things that we already know, these simple practices that, if implemented, can have a huge cascading benefit across homes and actually make a dent in reducing food waste and increasing food security. So consider signing up for us today or committing to buying local foods if you don't do that already. And we really look forward to staying in touch with all of you. Be connected, and I'd love to see the slide for the next event so I can share that. Our next event in this series is called Creating Black Gold Through Vermiculture, and it's with Kendall Dunnigan from Occidental Arts and Ecology Center based in Sonoma County. And through this workshop, you can learn to compost and learn how to turn your kitchen waste into black gold that helps you to grow food that you've never seen before. Kendall's an absolute pro, and I encourage you all to join us then. Let's keep this conversation going. Thanks so much for joining us from all corners of the world today. It's wonderful to be together and weave the world. And again, Audrey, I just want to thank you for sharing your wisdom and your skills. You're such a powerful entrepreneur and community leader, and your model is really emblematic of the kinds of solutions that our world needs now. Something that educates the community and that creates economic resource and that rolls out solutions that are beneficial for the earth and our people. So may your spirit and work rise, and thanks everyone for being here together. Feel free to keep chatting in the chat for a few more minutes, and we'll look forward to seeing you all at the next one. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Actually, if everyone wants to take their mute off and say hooray for Audria, that would be an awesome moment. So let's all take our mute off. Thank you, Audria.
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Fabulous.
you.
Have a wonderful night.
Thanks.
Oh yeah, I just heard that actually. Sorry. Is there any other questions that you want to?
No, we were all just saying thank you and celebrating you. Everyone said, "Great, Audria." Everyone said, "Thank you so much." So,
Oh my gosh. Thank you. Thank you for putting the time to look at the video. And really great to see you guys. And girls. Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Okay, bye.